Is this the game to replace Warhammer? No, but you should play it. Welcome, traveler. My name is Blake Rea, and this is Love, Death, and Dice. I spend a lot of time on Instagram looking at painted models, train getaways, and images of a cultured nature. While on Instagram, I get a lot of ads. Most of them are terrible, but I got one that reached into the child part of my brain and yanked on all the right nostalgic strings.
Mold 'em! Fight 'em! Smash 'em! Recast 'em!
Necromolds is a tabletop skirmish game where instead of building and painting models, you use molds and clay. I was obsessed with this concept the moment I saw it, and I immediately reached out to the creator of the game. Surprise! He's also a filmmaker, like me, so we immediately hit it off and he kindly sent over a care package. My channel is small, and for a company to take time and give me a chance with their game speaks to the kindness, mentality, and desire to share their world with more people. It was a very human interaction with a company, one that I don't think is always possible with a company of a larger scale. All that said, these opinions are my own, and I am under no obligation to say anything other than my own opinion. The game oozes charm and cool, from the saturated art style to the playfully dark lore and chunky plastic peripherals. The game sets you up as one of the last remaining necrocasters, a powerful individual wielding a magic ring, a few ancient books, and the souls of the dead to summon clay monsters of war. It's like Green Lantern meets Zatch Bell. There's a couple of you having Toonami flashbacks upon hearing that one. I would be surprised if these weren't an influence. It's a game that very clearly is trying to capture the childhood obsessions of its creator, and as a result is an amalgam of blazing, colorful ideas that combine in a fresh experience. It has the crafting element of Warhammer miniatures, the colorful plastic of Hot Wheels, the art of old D&D books, comic book strips, monster biographies, collectibles, tradables, and glow-in-the-dark peripherals. The board the game is played on has a hidden object minigame in the core book. It's like Where's Waldo or I Spy. It's wonderful. This is clearly somebody's obsession, and I hope they appreciate their design team because it's amazingly realized. Oh look, a credits section. Haven't seen one of those in a while, Games Workshop. One of the things that makes Warhammer so beloved is that it's a combination of so many different things. It's a chaotic soup of every imaginable idea. It's fun as a gamer to be caught up in that whirlwind of energy. There is something for everyone. Necromolds is much the same way, and if you like Warhammer for vibes alone, you're gonna adore this game. As of writing, there is the core game, an expansion, 4-player upgrades, and a whole heap of monster molds and game rings to buy. Unless you're playing Frostgrave, you aren't spoiled for choice on expansions and accessories in the indie scene, so seeing this much stuff gives me hope that the game is healthy, and my investment is worthwhile. I played so much Pokemon Diamond and Pearl as a kid, so from an early age, I've been obsessed with collecting things. This game has not but one thing to collect, but two. The Necromolds and Caster Rings. The Necromolds are used to create your army, and the Caster Ring squishes your opponent, leaving behind a fun little monster print. There's a neat double pager at the end of the book showing all the rings to collect. Wait, I need the Astral Owl. Maybe the mystery bag I got will have it. So many options and peripherals this early in a game's life has me confident that the game will be supported for a good long while. Thousands of years before the age of man, there was a time of magic, war, and weaponized death. Powerful wizards from every continent wielded rings of the most potent magic and coveted ancient tomes of knowledge, the Necromold. Spellbooks that create monsters. Siphoning the energy of death itself, they molded the Golem. Artificial beings of a terrifying nature and the most volatile weapon in any army. Perhaps too strong even for their wielder. These necrocasters, as they are called, come from the deepest oceans, the thickest forests, and the most haunted of mountains. The battles they fought with each other were called the Golem Wars. Strangely, no one knows how these wars ended. That's because they aren't over. In the present day, one of these rings and the notes of a lost woman have found their way into your hands. At the end of these scratches of words, you are warned of coming dangers, and must learn to use the Necromolds to defend yourself, and prepare for the next part of the war, or else be crushed by it. Of course I'm gonna love this game. It's about death magic coated in colorful paint. The first thing I loved about cracking open the lore book is that it's written as if you, the player, are being handed these notes and magical items. We are thrust into a world we never knew and find that magic does exist. We are invited to put ourselves in this game, page 1, which I adore. Both the core box and the expansion allow you to explore the battles of the Golem Wars, and to play as the major factions. Factions in this game are flavorful and distinct. Even the ones that I thought would be kind of like traditional fantasy tropes have cool twists on them. The Quarry is a rocky place where emotion is shunned. Laws are chiseled in literal stone, and once the law has been made, it cannot be changed until the text erodes from the stone. Deepwater is all about capitalism and politics on the high seas. When they undoubtedly win, they can use the golems for fortune and profit. Cromlech is a literal city of ghosts. Unlike all of the other factions who fight for their land and populace, there is no will to fight beyond their leader's petty jealousy. Netch is my personal favorite. He combines his knowledge of golems and necromancy to create shambling horrors. His daggers also remind me of the floor of my childhood bowling alley. Love that. Nayatakan, I think, is a wild paradise. Its main export appears to be a beautiful flower called a dusk heart that everyone just can't get enough of. But it seems like it's spreading mind-controlling spores across the realm. Basalt Isle is the home of the biggest bad in the game, and has the air of a mad scientist's laboratory. Once a place filled with people, all that's left of them are the ruins of a soul-sucking experiment for a magical stone. Maybe all of these factions are a little too serious for you. Maybe you want a little chaos in your wargame. Remilda is the final faction of the game and is a wild ball of energy. She loves wandering the world and ragging on any necrocaster she deems too powerful. She also may or may not be possessed by an eldritch demon from the afterlife. Speaking of the afterlife, magic in this world is dark. My favorite thing has to be the golems the game is built around. To create a golem, you must share a piece of your own soul with its body. Doing so allows you to control the golem, but it will probably make you lose all mental faculties or just straight up die. To get around this, necrocasters use the caster rings, which allow them to harvest the souls of the dead in their place. In-universe, regardless of your reasons for using golems, you're a terrible person for doing that. Interestingly, the souls you sacrifice can affect the golem's personality and traits. If you sacrifice a bit of your soul, you might take on some of the golem's traits. There is some moral ambiguity and complex themes between these colorful pages. Political intrigue, afterlife, the tragedy of power, and the sacrifice of life, sometimes accidentally. This game plays with more profound subjects, but like a wonderful magic trick, it still totally works as a game for kids where you get to create cool monsters and then squish them, all the while playing as your kid's self. That is Necromolds' incredible strength over other games in this space. It can be enjoyed by anyone, at any age, fully. The rules are split across multiple books and a website, and feature various modes of play. These are called Standard, Basic, Advanced, and Solo. Though the modes have the same name in the core box and the expansion, that doesn't always mean they are interchangeable. For example, standard play in the Call to Arms box builds off of the standard rules in the core box, but the advanced rules can't be used simultaneously. Confusingly, a few of the rules are rewritten with different in-game requirements. Additionally, solo play is only compatible with the core box, and you can't use any of the goodies in the expansion, which is disappointing. It's best to think of each box as a different, isolated version of the same game, and most of the time, don't mix even though you need the core box for the expansion. The core box is a taste of the world. You get a few monsters and a handful of extra abilities from the book. Learning the gameplay is straightforward, and the games run relatively quickly. Call to Arms adds many new ways to customize your playstyle. As a result is a more significant learning curve, and games last longer. I'm not going to go into the minutia of the mechanics, they already have plenty of high-quality videos explaining the game for you to check out. That said, there are mechanics that make the game modes really fun and help the player feel awesome. List building is nothing short of brilliant. The clay you build with represents the damned souls you sacrificed to mold your army. Run out of clay, and your list is ready. No numbers, no complex lists, just will it and make it. As far as I know, there are no faction limitations either. Yeah, monsters are very clearly from one faction, but everybody's pining for the same magical knowledge, so take whatever monsters you think are cool. The impermanent nature of clay allows you to experiment like no other wargame. Say you are playing Frostgrave and want to try a new magic style, you must commit money and time to build those models before trying anything. Want to try a new army build in Necromolds? Mold out a variety of what you already own, or make a single purchase and add as many monsters as your clay allows. Don't like it? Send it back to the jar instead of collecting dust on your shelf. Or, worse, your pile of shame. A wargame with no pile of shame? We live in modern times. Comparatively, this game is cheaper to play than most wargames, and you are encouraged to try the different factions without burden. That being said, the connection with a painted model you sank dozens of hours into will be more profound than a clay one, and that might be more important to you. Rules change wildly depending on what mode you are playing in what box, but a standard game of Necromolds is this. Mold your army, assign character sheets and upgrades, set them up on opposing sides of the board, like chess, roll a pool of dice each turn, and then use claws, ranged attacks, and magical abilities to smash your enemy. When a monster is destroyed, you get to ever so satisfyingly squish it with your caster ring and absorb its soul energy for even more powerful abilities. My favorite has to be Magic Missile. Spending 6 soul gems allows you to roll up a ball of clay and drop it from above. Whatever it lands on is instantly destroyed. It says not to throw it, but drunk me is gonna throw it. The gameplay loop is relatively simple, but abilities and modifiers add a much needed spice to the game. You got weapon abilities, character abilities, champion abilities, spirit abilities, fan-made abilities. Many of these abilities are assigned randomly to you as well, making you think on your feet with the resources you have, much like a trading card game or the randomized charts of 90s Necromunda. The advanced sections of each book add elements to the game to make it more dynamic as the game goes on. Things like support characters, army conditions, and risks to your dice. I wouldn't say advanced requires a whole new understanding of the game, but it does add a bit more flavor to an already fun game. Basic play is meant to strip down all of the complex elements of the game for a younger one. In my opinion, it's a mixed bag depending on which box you're playing with. The core box has a well-realized 2-page version of the game that can get kids smashing Play-Doh in no time. The expansion, which is already a complicated version of the game, doesn't change much. It's half a page, and a couple sections say it's the same rule except this one small thing. Or, and this is kind of funny, just says, you're ready to get started, rather than simplifying the rule at all. This is a bummer, because I can see kids being way more interested in all the colorful bits and characters that are available in the expansion, and a more complex rule set is a barrier to that. Overall, the back and forth is tight even though it's an I go then you go system. The abilities are plentiful enough for replayability, and there are loads of options for both narrative and competitive players. I have a lot of good things to say about the core rules of the book. It's really well thought out, but I do have complaints about the formatting. How rules are emphasized in the book is an example of this. Advanced rules have an orange hue highlight, but orange is also used to add attention to statements in non-advanced sections. On the monster character sheets, certain details are highlighted in blue, but relate to the rules in advanced play, not standard play's blue. Though the rules are snappy, multifaceted, and plenty imaginative, I think the layout between the two books creates a confusing first read-through and will require a couple of games to truly grasp, let alone teach to a kid. Luckily, both rulebooks have a quick reference on the back to keep you grounded as you learn. The rules are an excellent representation of the lore, though. From smashing monsters to absorb their energy to how monsters take on the traits of the spirits they contain, the mechanics support the lore, and the lore enriches the gameplay. So, do you need both the core box and the expansion to enjoy Necromolds fully? That depends on what you want out of the game. Get the core box if you want something to play with kids or drunk friends, and then the expansion if you want a serious game. Call to Arms feels like a much more realized version of the game and world, and I see it being the standard of which the creators and community build on the game. Speaking of community, let's add some names to my toolbox. Thank you, Bad Wolf Forge and Give Gibbs Treats for joining my Patreon. That's the best username. The rest of you need to shape up. If you want to support the channel, consider following the link below. I'm painting a Night Lord's Thunderhawk at 500 patrons. From the get-go, the game is flexible and molded by the community. There is a dedicated option rules section in each book. The mindset is to interact with the game in the way that you want. Unlike Modern Games Workshop, it's open to the community and encouraged by the owners. If the cult following of Necromunda or Mordheim is any indication, the encouragement of fan content is critical to the long-term success of a game. After diving through the rules and lore, I even had some of my own ideas. My current 40k army is Chaos Knights. I love big models on the table. What if a mold uses your whole jar of spell clay, and the monster it makes is a dungeon boss with dozens of wounds and various abilities? With a little 3D modeling and printing, or just basic crafting, anybody can contribute their own monster and faction to this game. I have been getting into 3D modeling lately, so maybe a future video. If you want to contribute to the canonical events of the world itself, they just launched the Golem Wars organized play on their website. You can follow the unfolding story as a radio show and contribute your home battles to influence the next episode, all the while getting free scenarios. There are about 1,000 people in their Discord too, so the community is small, but you get to be on the ground floor of something cool as it grows in scope. I had so many expectations for this game, maybe an unfair amount, but it smashed all of that and became one of my favorite games as of late. As Warhammer the IP continues to become bigger and bigger, I feel it's lost the scrappiness to do the unexpected, to experiment in ways we haven't seen before. It makes sense, they have an entertaining formula, and it makes money. But because of that, I feel it's essential to dive into the indie space and worlds created by people messing around with different formulas. Those are the game designers and storytellers taking risks and looking at wargaming in fresh ways. I'll give it to Games Workshop. They have the best minis. But with a knack for stories and a passion for game design, I think there is plenty of competition for the best war game. This might not be the game to replace Warhammer, but it has definitely made me rethink how imaginative the future of wargaming can be. Until next time, subscribe and go squish some clay monsters.